My grandfather built the church I was raised in. I reflect on this verse from Deuteronomy. Keep these words that I'm commanding you today in your heart. Recite them to your children. Talk about them when at home, when away, when you lie down, and when you rise. I didn't realize I could relate everyday living to my own faith journey until I worked in the church. I realized my experience with becoming fluent in Spanish and living in Spain and Little Mexico right here in Chicago, together with being raised in a small family congregation, is what make me who I am. I ask you to reflect on your own faith journey. How have you gotten to where you are now in your journey? My background in teaching language led me to the conclusion that the one language we all need to become fluent in is our faith. The way to get there is the same way as when we become fluent in a language. The analogy I like to use is I compare learning English as a second language. We assume that everyone coming through our doors understands us and is fluent. My experience tells me that this is not true. So, what does it take to become fluent in a language? It takes being surrounded by the language in your home, raised by those who speak it fluently, or living in the country itself and being immersed in it 24/7. You don't become fluent in a few hours a day or a week. This leads me to wonder about our faith and how we teach it. It takes being surrounded by the home, parents, and others who speak it, the congregation, and the Christian culture. Making disciples is 24/7, and it can't happen in only 1 or 2 hours a week. Learning a language involves being immersed and surrounded by it from an early age. It means being surrounded by ritual and tradition. Research has shown that if a child is immersed in a language before the age of 13, they become fluent and have no accent. What does that mean for the church? You learn a language through providing tools and resources. It includes hands-on involvement. Common words and actions become traditions. Fluency results in becoming a way of life. And intentionally teaching faith practices should be our goal as Christian educators. Every faith community has a culture. We make assumptions everyone in our midst speaks the same language we do, and we know it's not true. Immersing one in learning a language takes work and intentionality. And if you gave a survey of your congregation and asked people to identify Christian or Presbyterian traditions, could they do it? Are you fluent in a language? I guarantee it didn't happen in a school where you have studied it for 1 hour, 5 days a week for maybe 4 years. You learned it at home, or you went to the country where it was spoken and were immersed in the language. To become fluent, you need opportunities in your life to apply it. And that's how you become more fluent. A weekly message connects us to God's Word. A faith formation class provides resources. Are these the only times during the week that we think about applying our faith in the real world? The opportunity to evangelize and serve others outside the congregation lies in our own understanding of faith as a way of life and relating our belief to everyday living. What are some ways we help others verbalize their faith? Through actions, through words? My husband was in the Navy for 26 years, and we lived in Spain and Japan, and I compare the feeling of living on a military base in another country to how our congregations function sometimes. We find comfort being on a base. You have a choice. You can stay on the base or you can get off, and you get to know the others and the language and the culture. The importance of learning ritual and tradition as they define a culture is what makes our country unique. It's also what makes our own faith unique. And a culture is passed on to the next generation by learning and knowing the rituals or traditions, and so is our faith. Cultures are what make congregations unique. And if I were to ask you to describe the culture of your congregation, how would you describe it? This would be a good conversation starter for a leadership team. I'd ask you to think about that. Both the culture of a country and a congregation grow out of the basics that I list here. Time is made to have caring conversation for all ages, inter-ages too. Rituals are practiced intentionally every day. Traditions develop and are passed from one generation to the next, and values are known and important. We need to be honest with one another and open and truthful about caring relationships. We need to recognize the importance of becoming fluent in the language of faith and make it a way of life. For Christian educators, we describe what we do as making disciples. To do this, we need to be intentional. After working for years in congregations across the country, in Australia and in Canada, I've come to realize there are 3 very important steps we need to take. We must be intentional, set expectations, and have a plan for accountability as a follow-up. Most of the time, we are very good at taking the first 2 steps, but the follow-up piece is very rarely done. And how we know if something is effective and will stick if we don't ask or evaluate what we assume works. So I ask you, how will you in your setting be intentional, set expectations, and follow up? What does it mean to be a Christian faith role model? Fluent or not, we're all on a faith journey together, so it's up to us to be enthusiastic about everything we do. We are the only role models some have. It begins with us. Let's see it, hear it, and live it, and others will follow.